David Rice is just a regular teenager living in a quiet, rural town. He has a crush on a classmate named Millie and decides to give her a snow globe as a gift. Millie accepts it with a smile, but the moment is ruined when another student, Mark, snatches it from her hands and starts mocking David. Mark throws the snow globe onto the frozen lake. Ignoring Millie's warnings, David walks out onto the ice to retrieve it. He reaches the snow globe, but the ice breaks beneath him, and he plunges into the freezing water. Millie tries to help, but David is swept away by the current and disappears under the surface. Suddenly, he finds himself inside a public library, soaking wet and completely confused. Disoriented and in shock, David tries to leave without drawing attention. At home, his father William is waiting, annoyed that David is late. They live alone since David's mother abandoned them when he was a child. William questions,
What happened to you?
but David refuses to answer. Frustrated, William forces his way into David's room. Just as he bursts in, David vanishes and reappears back in the library. It dawns on David that he has an extraordinary ability. He can teleport. Seeing a chance for a better life, he returns home, gathers his savings, and makes the decision to leave town. In a park, David starts testing the limits of his power. He flips through a travel magazine filled with tourist landmarks and attempts to teleport to them. When he sees the Empire State Building, a place he once visited with his mother, his emotions trigger his ability again, and he suddenly appears on top of the building. David realizes he can only teleport to places he's already been. With no money left, he decides to rob a bank using his powers. He visits a bank under the pretense of using the bathroom and catches a glimpse of the vault. That night, he teleports inside, grabs as much cash as he can, and repeats the process several times until his bag is full. The next day, the bank launches an investigation. A man named Roland Cox arrives and claims to be from the government. He asks for surveillance footage and a list of everyone who entered the bank recently. Roland points out that the vault was never opened and suspects that the robbery was committed by someone with the ability to teleport. Years later, David is living large in a luxury New York penthouse. He has everything he could ever want and comes and goes as he pleases. His apartment is filled with photos of places around the world, and he even has a hidden room where he stores currencies from dozens of countries. One night, he teleports to a bar in London and notices an attractive woman. He instantly teleports to her side, unaware that someone else, a man named Griffin, sees him do it. David spends the night with the woman he met at the bar. The next day, he teleports to Fiji to surf massive waves, and later to Egypt, where he casually eats lunch atop the Sphinx. Meanwhile, deep in a tropical jungle, another man is frantically teleporting through the dense forest, trying to escape. But something's wrong. A cable is latched onto him, preventing him from jumping too far. He ends up tangled in a tree wrapped in electrified wires. Roland appears and approaches without hurry. The man asks why he's being hunted, and Roland coldly replies that teleporters are abominations and must be wiped out. Without hesitation, he stabs the man, killing him. Moments later, Roland receives a call. It's about the mysterious bank robbery from years ago. Back in New York, David returns to his apartment only to find Roland waiting for him. Roland claims he's investigating the robbery, but makes it clear he's not with the police. When David tells him to leave, Roland responds by pulling out a baton and electrocuting him. David tries to teleport away but can barely move more than a few feet. Roland closes the gap, shocks him again, and throws him over a ledge. He then fires a cable from the baton, attaching it to David and anchoring it to the floor, effectively limiting his teleportation. Desperate to break free, David manages to teleport into a hidden compartment in the wall and slices through the cable. He grabs several bags of money and disappears. He reappears in his old bedroom at his father's house. William hears the noise and rushes in. Seeing David, he begs him to stay, admitting that he thought he was losing his mind ever since David vanished. David assures him he's not crazy, and just like that, vanishes again. The next day, David searches for Millie and finds her working at a local bar. There, he runs into his old school bully Mark, and the two get into a physical fight. David ends the confrontation by teleporting Mark straight into a bank vault and leaving him locked inside. David returns to Millie, and they reconnect. He tells her he's working in banking and asks how her life has been. Millie confesses she still dreams of seeing the world. David invites her to join him on a trip to Rome. Overjoyed, Millie immediately agrees. Unbeknownst to them, Griffin is secretly watching from a distance. Later, David and Millie arrive in Rome and head out to visit the Colosseum. Meanwhile, Roland impersonates a CIA agent to speak with Mark, who's now at a police station. He questions him about the vault incident, and from that conversation, learns about Millie and that she's recently arrived in Rome. In Rome, David and Millie spend time in a cozy apartment, catching up on the years they've missed. Their conversation turns romantic, and the two share a passionate kiss. Later, David sneaks Millie into the Colosseum, and they explore the ruins while avoiding security. David steps away to unlock a secured door and runs straight into Griffin. Griffin reveals that he's a jumper too, part of a secret group with teleportation abilities. He criticizes David for his reckless, indulgent lifestyle and warns him that an ancient group called the Paladins is hunting down jumpers worldwide. Before David can react, two Paladins appear. They move in quickly, weapons drawn, and a brutal fight breaks out. As David tries to escape the ambush, one of the electrified cables catches him, disabling his teleportation again. Griffin jumps into action and takes on the two Paladins. With precise, brutal efficiency, he defeats both of them. After neutralizing the threat, Griffin tells David that he's been killing Paladins for years. It's what he does. Without another word, Griffin teleports away to his secret hideout. David notices the shimmering residue left behind from Griffin's jump, a jump scar, and decides to follow. He tracks Griffin to the lair, but Griffin warns him to stay away. Taking the hint, David returns to Millie. He leads her out of the Colosseum, but Millie, shaken and confused, demands to know what's going on. David is about to explain when police arrive and arrest him for trespassing. At the station, David is questioned. He keeps calm, insisting he's just a tourist who broke the rules and apologizes for the incident. The officers leave, telling him to wait for a representative from the US Embassy. While he waits, a woman walks in. It's Mary, his mother. David is stunned. She gives him a key to unlock his cuffs and warns him that he has 30 seconds before more Paladins arrive. She rushes out. David tries to follow, but she vanishes. He finds Millie again, and the two head to the airport. On the way, David tells her they need to part ways for her safety. Millie is clearly upset but boards the plane alone. Meanwhile, Roland shows up at William's house pretending to be an IRS agent. He asks questions about David, but William is cold and uncooperative. He tells Roland he hasn't seen David in 8 years and that Mary left them when David was 5. He then demands Roland leave, but Roland refuses. Back at Griffin's hideout, David examines the walls, plastered with photos, maps, and intel on Paladins across the globe. He asks Griffin why the Paladins are hunting jumpers. Griffin explains, "The war has been raging since the Dark Ages. Paladins are religious extremists who believe only God should have the power to teleport, and anyone who can do it must be destroyed. Worse, they won't hesitate to go through David's loved ones to get to him." Fearing for his family, David teleports to his father's home and finds William unconscious. He rushes him to the hospital, where doctors take over. David returns to Griffin, asking for more information on Roland. He wants to stop him for good, but Griffin shuts him down, saying he's been trying for over a decade and has the scars to prove it. David offers to help, but Griffin still refuses. He teleports to China, trying to shake David, but David follows, persisting. Finally, Griffin agrees only because David knows where Roland might show up next. Near Millie. They split up. David goes to retrieve Millie while Griffin heads back to his hideout to gear up. David finds Millie at her apartment. She's shocked to see him again and says she wants nothing more to do with his chaos. She asks him to leave. But just then, David hears footsteps. Roland and his men are approaching. With no time to waste, David is forced to tell Millie the truth that he's a jumper. Millie is stunned when she sees David teleport. Her shock quickly turns to panic and she runs. But with danger closing in, David grabs her and jumps them both to Griffin's hideout. Moments later, Roland and his team arrive at Millie's apartment. They find the place empty, but Roland spots a glowing jump scar, the signature left by a teleport. They pull out a device and activate it beneath the scar, forming a portal to follow David. At the hideout, Griffin is furious to see Millie. He tells David that bringing her here was a huge mistake. The Paladins will trace the scar right to them. David and Griffin check the scar, and it's already growing. Within seconds, Roland bursts into the room. David and Griffin scatter. As David hides, he notices something chilling a photo of his mother Mary on Griffin's wall, labeled as one of the Paladins. Before he can react, an electrified cable latches onto him and pins him against the wall. Griffin charges in wielding a flamethrower. He and Roland clash in a brutal, fast-paced fight. Griffin uses his teleportation skills to gain the upper hand, but Roland holds his ground with Paladin tech. Griffin eventually teleports out, only to return seconds later, dragging a moving bus straight toward Roland. Roland dodges at the last second, just barely avoiding being flattened. Meanwhile, Millie finds David still stuck and tries to free him. Roland steps in, ready to strike her down, but Griffin returns in the nick of time and blasts Roland back into the jump scar. Then he dives in after him. Roland and Griffin rematerialize inside Millie's apartment, and the fight resumes there. Back in the hideout, Millie manages to free David. But she's had enough. She tells David she wants nothing more to do with this and just wants her life back. David understands. He agrees to take her home. Just as they're preparing to leave, Griffin reappears holding the Paladin's jump scar opener. But the scar is still active. One of the Paladins manages to fire a cable through it and snatch Millie, dragging her back to the apartment. David's instinct is to go after her, but Griffin has other plans. He's arming a bomb and tells David this is their chance to wipe out the Paladins for good. David refuses to let Millie be collateral damage. He teleports away with the bomb. Griffin follows. The two clash in an intense, high-speed chase that spans the globe from Egypt to San Francisco to New York, all while fighting for control of the bomb's detonator. They finally land in a war-torn area. Griffin seizes the remote but doesn't notice a massive electrical pylon crashing down. David reacts quickly, teleporting Griffin directly into the collapsing structure. The blast of electricity holds him in place, rendering him powerless. Griffin warns David not to go back, that he won't survive against 5 Paladins alone. But David's mind is made up. He jumps back to the apartment, determined to save Millie, but the moment he arrives, 5 electrified cables slam into him, anchoring him in place. The Paladins brace the apartment around him, trying to hold him still. David strains, fighting through the pain, trying to teleport again. As David continues to struggle, each attempt to teleport sends violent tremors through the entire apartment. The cables connected to him aren't just anchoring him, they're tethering the structure itself. With every push, the walls groan and crack. Finally, with a surge of raw force, David teleports and drags the entire apartment with him. In an instant, they reappear at the frozen lake where he first discovered his power. The sudden shift throws the Paladins off completely. Some are knocked unconscious, others fall into the icy water and disappear. Without pausing, David jumps the apartment again, this time returning it to the public library. He collapses, dazed and exhausted. As he regains consciousness, he sees Roland still alive nearby. David doesn't say a word. He teleports Roland to the Grand Canyon and leaves him there, alone. Sometime later, David tracks down his mother. A young girl answers the door, Mary's daughter. Finally, David and Mary speak face to face. She confesses the truth. She's a Paladin. When David first teleported at age 5, she had to make the heartbreaking choice to leave to protect him from the others. Now reunited, David asks what happens next. Mary looks at him and simply says, "I'll give you a head start." David rejoins Millie, who's been waiting for him outside. Without a word, they take each other's hand, exchange a quiet smile, and vanish.